thing about New Brunswick is that there are the only bilingual province in Canada, and so, you know, the rest of the provinces, they're looking to see what they're going to do, and so they have a bit of a leadership role. And so I know that a lot of academics are really up in arms about them removing early immersion, so it's going to be interesting to see. There are protests there as well about what's going on in the curriculum. So I mean, I think the government, and certainly from their action plan for official languages, they know that things aren't going as well as they would like. They know that they're trying to improve on that, so I have these reports and recommendations coming through. They just don't necessarily know how to go about it. And so,
are they learning and hiring people like you that are a bit more ahead with them, perhaps?
well, I think that what we're doing is we're trying to add a solution to what's going on. So what I wanted to do is we've trained the teachers, and I really want to be able to train the students, so the teacher and the student can meet in the middle. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to take a class, but if you're someone who likes to take classes, I mean, each person is individual, and you need to tailor your language learning to yourself. What I really want to do is offer you solutions to your problems, so you don't have to hit those plateaus that you know you can't really figure out how to get to the next level. So you'd have solutions to your problems, so you could really see how to move from the beginner to advanced stage. And so, I mean, we're taking things in a different way, and so I mean the technology that's out there is great now, and I like to kind of let people know that there are different technologies out there that can help them and can be useful to them. So it's like anything, you know, if you want to excel at something, you want to take the advice of people who have gone down the road before you, and then make it your own, and hopefully add something to it. So,
you know, my view is that, and I'm probably a bit unorthodox here, but as long as in the school system we're trying to teach, quote, the basics, or, quote, syntax, we will never succeed in getting the students interested in the language. What we should do is give them stories to listen to and read, and let them enjoy the language, and let them, I think the technology is such that it doesn't have to be with our system, but let them choose. Make available to them a range of things, but always listen and read. Never just read. I mean, you said some people are visual, some people are oral. Everybody's both. It really doesn't matter the degree to which somebody is more visual or somebody's more oral. Everybody remembers better if they can hear and see. So we should always have in the classrooms stories that they can listen to and that they can read, and then they need to work on vocabulary. And if they work on vocabulary in an intelligent way, it means words and phrases, not just individual words. And learning, starting to see how the words come together, but not like you know, I in my experience, if I have one way of saying hello, I'm happy. I don't need 10. When I'm further along in the language, if I start to pick up on the fact that people say, you know, how's it going? Okay. But initially, I'm very happy with hello. That's all I would use. And if in a lot of the stuff that I was listening to, and I would choose what to listen to based on what interested me. And if in there was lots of how's it going, I start to at least get used to the fact that people say how's it going. I'd probably be too timid to use it. I would still probably say hi, because it's short and easy. So I think there's too much of it, and the same is true of grammar. I think grammar, the basis of grammar, all of that's unnecessary. And the proof is that the overwhelming majority of kids go through school where the emphasis is on learning grammar and trying to get it right for the test, and they cannot speak the language. What is the possible point of teaching people for 10, 8, however many years? The net result is they cannot speak. They might just as well have been doing something else. That's my views. I'm a little bit extreme on that, but I think
this is going to differ just a little bit. I want to make sure that we're very clear about children learners and adult learners, and I'm here tonight to talk about adult learners.
To me, it's
just
the
to
same.
keep it straight.
To me, it's the same. I'll just let you know.
We'll talk about it. Well, okay. Anyways, so there are basically, I mean, I've been marking the grade 12 French provincial exams for the last 8 years, so I've you know, spent time listening to these students and the level of language they're coming out with. And what's gone on in education in Canada is the pendulum has swung. We've gone from strict grammar instruction to getting children to speak. And what I would suggest is that we need to meet somewhere in the middle, that knowing how the language works and also practicing it are kind of two components that need to come together. So there needs to be kind of a balance between the two. Like strict grammar instruction, what we've stopped doing, we've teaching for English students the basics of English grammar, which is preventing students from appreciating another language. They don't even have the basic kind of understanding of how language works that will allow them to move on to another language. So they're looking to their second language to understand their first language. But if they have their first language down better, it would allow them to move forward more quickly in another language. And so, I hate to use the word grammar because it's the way it encompasses a lot, but the focus is on syntax. Because syntax is sentence structure, and the vocabulary. Those two skills run through reading, writing, and listening and speaking. And so I've heard students over and over, they're translating word for word. And the purpose of syntax, and why I want to stress it so much, is because by knowing syntax, it allows you to think in the language instead of translating word for word, which is more cumbersome. Now, that's not to say that just strict grammar instruction alone is gonna get you there, because you need to practice, you need to speak. There are other skills, but combine them, having an awareness, having a knowledge of certain aspects of grammar are really important in moving you forward, because it makes it easier that children, if you look at them, they have to learn through trial and error. So they're picking up on repetition and they're piecing the language together for themselves. If you take something like a textbook, they've already shown you how the language comes together. You know, you can read about it, and then when you don't have to maybe necessarily memorize it, but if you're hearing it, you can already say, oh, I've seen that. I see how it works. It's one way to help you. I'm not saying you have to use that exclusively. It's nice to combine different techniques and methods and technology and bring it all together, but do it to suit your own needs.
Just to comment on that, I agree with you on the repetition. And I agree with you that the child has a very limited content that the child hears many, many times. And through a process of 1.5 years or 2 years of listening, they eventually start to be able to use some words. So for the adult, we just have to do the same thing. So what I recommend, I deliberately went out to learn Russian for the reason that I have always felt that grammar was unhelpful in learning a language, because I simply couldn't understand the explanations. Now, I have a lot, in fact, I even brought with me some grammar books, and I could go at random and point to any grammatical explanation in that book, and if I read it out loud, it will sound like nonsense. To most people, it does. To me, not to a grammar teacher, but to most people, it sounds like nonsense. I couldn't cope with grammar, so I said, Russian is a very grammar-heavy language. I'm going to learn Russian. So I went in there, and again, when you read the explanations of Russian, it is, if you think French or German is difficult, Russian, they've got a different imperfect verbs depending on whether you're going once or going and coming back, or whether you're going in a car. It's just unbelievable. And the singular and plural, depending on this, it's in the genitive and sometimes it's in the dative, and the endings all change. Is hopeless. There is no way through an explanation of something that I have not experienced. It's totally meaningless to me. However, what we do and what we encourage, when I started learning Russian, I had a very simple story that I had written in English for our English learners. I had it translated into Russian because Henry's probably gone now, his colleague is Russian. So he and his wife translated it, they recorded it, I listened to it 50 times. So what you have to do at the beginning is you have to do a bit what the child did. And so I said to you, if you can't hear the differences in the tenses, you should not be listening to the radio. You should be listening to a limited amount of content over and over and over. It's a little bit monotonous at first, but it's just to get you started. So again, my feeling on that is repetition, yes. Grammar, me, and I think if you say before we had more grammar, but people couldn't speak. Now we have less grammar and people still can't speak. Now we're going to go half grammar and have something else. People still won't be able to speak, in my opinion. I'm sorry. It's doomed to failure, in my view.